the European United Left.
Thank you, Chairman. Ambassador, you said that one of the key issues that we, meaning the present generation, would be judged on was how we dealt with the present economic and financial crisis. Now, as you know, this economic disaster was precipitated by reckless speculation and profiteering by United States-based and internationally based financial institutions, facilitated by the mania for deregulation and liberalisation pushed by several US administrations and European administrations. Now, what is the Obama administration going to do about this situation, considering that massively powerful hedge funds are still conducting the same type of activities on the financial markets internationally, are speculating, for example, against the Greek people and exacting an enormous price from the Greek working class, who are paying for the super profits being wrung out by the speculation of these people? Now, most of these sharks are based on the east coast of the United States, the hedge funds, and more in London. So what is the thinking of your administration against what I call the dictatorship of these hedge funds and financial institutions? Secondly, you mentioned that free trade was viewed suspiciously by working people in the United States, free trade agreements, and the instinct of American working class people is correct here, because free trade agreements, I would argue, have not been in their interest, but in the interest of the major international corporations which benefit from free trade at the expense of driving down wages and working conditions for working people. And that has been very true in the United States, as it has in other parts of the world. Now, can I ask you, Ambassador, as you know, in the 60s, 70s and 80s, American administrations supported virtually every foul dictatorship that emerged in Latin America and elsewhere for the sake of facilitating trade, with big American companies profiting hugely. Now, what has changed in the approach of the Obama administration to trade? Is trade still a value-free activity that must not involve human rights and other rights? Or what has significantly changed from in the new administration? And if something has significantly changed, why does your administration still continue to give massively favourable economic support and treatment to states that violate blatantly human rights, including Israel? And what will the outcome be of the disaster and the massacre of people bringing humanitarian aid to Gaza? Will that make any change in how you trade with the State of Israel, for example? Similarly, with Honduras, how do you justify continuing a full relationship with a stitched-up government that emanated originally from a coup? And lastly, Chairman and Ambassador, you referred to the disaster of the oil pollution in the Gulf of Mexico, which is a massive source of concern, of course, to the American people, to working people, to those who, environmentalists, to everybody. What are the implications for the future of deep-sea drilling for oil of this disaster?
Mr. Higgins, you had raised a number of issues and asked a number of questions. One about financial regulation, and you made the comment that the United States is responsible for the financial crisis. I think we're past the place where we can try to lay blame on who caused the crisis and who didn't. Look, we're all in this together, and we've got to solve it together. A family anecdote. My father was a small businessman. He had a small partnership. My father's African American. His partner was a white man. And I remember one time they were struggling. They were having difficulties in the business and wondering how they were going to make payroll. And my father turned to his partner and he said, "You know, we came over here in different ships, but we're in the same boat now." and that's where we are. I mean, we are. I could say that the Eurozone crisis is a product of Europe, but how is that going to help us? How is that going to help us solve the problem? The reality is that we are enmeshed in an interconnected global financial network, and we're going to have to work on this together. You also said we haven't done anything on financial reform. I would take issue with that. We are very close to the United States Congress in passing the most significant reform of our financial laws since the Great Depression. We're very close. And it's really important that as our laws move through the United States Congress, that there be close coordination with the EU, because again, this is an interconnected system. Commissioner Barnier was in Washington and New York recently talking about this very issue, and I'm encouraged that we can move together, if not in harmony, at least in coordination, as our financial reform comes into being. I also would disagree with your premise that our free trade policy does not take into account issues of labor and the environment. President Obama campaigned on a platform of making sure that trade negotiations are sensitive to labor and environmental issues. He's given that directive to the entire government, and that is something that we think about every day in the United States government. Mr. Dartmouth. Israel. Yes, I apologize. I did not address that. Yesterday, we all witnessed a tragedy on the high seas involving the effort to bring supplies and humanitarian aid to Gaza. The President immediately issued a statement. I don't know what to say other than before we draw any conclusions, we need to figure out what happened. I think that when anytime something like this happens, it's important to understand what are the facts, what really happened, and then deal with it appropriately.
An act of piracy on international waters, Ambassador, is quite clear what happened.
Well, we'll see. All the facts have not been in.